Hey Will, what's going on?
Ethan, how are you?
Good, how are you?
I am doing fantastic.
Man, I'm trying to get Nathan in here. There we go.
There we
What's going on, Nathan?
Going well. Very cold here. Very cold.
Same,
How cold is it?
same. Well, where I am, we had it was sub 10. I think the highest it got was 9, so 9 degrees today. So, and today was the first day of classes for me. So walking back to class for 15 minutes at a time was not fun at all. So, yeah, I mean my day has just been long and cold over here. There's a lot of cold.
Fair enough. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we want to welcome everybody in here. This is episode 3 of Show Choir Nation, the flagship podcast of Homeroom Show Choir. We did have show choir this past weekend, and so that was good. Even though there was a fair bit of snow that kind of wrecked a fair number of competitions, we still did have a number of competitions go on. And this is just a reminder to everybody watching live that this is going to be posted on both Spotify and YouTube after this. So you can search up Homeroom Show Choir on both Spotify and Instagram, and then you can find this podcast there too. Additionally, we are ramping up our written content a lot on homeroomshowchoir.com. Just today, we had several pieces go out. We had a piece go out about the snowstorm this past weekend.
Mm-hmm.
We also had a Beavercreek review, which we're going to talk about in an abbreviated version a little bit here. And then we have a couple of other pieces going up pretty soon in the near future as well. So I am William. To my top is Ethan, and to my right is Nathan. And we are going to dive right into what is perhaps the biggest story of this past weekend, and that is the snow. I think most of what we talked about last episode just pretty much got schmucked. We talked a lot about Waukee and Linmar. Both of those just entirely bit the dust. We talked about Sioux Falls Jefferson, that bit the dust. We talked about Gretna. We'll talk about Gretna a little bit later. That actually did go on. But Nathan, you actually just wrote a piece about this snowstorm. You did the research on it. Obviously, it's not fun. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, indeed. So if you do want to see the whole thing, go to homeroomshowchoir.com. But basically, overall, 5 of the competitions were canceled. 2 of them were postponed to Monday. Luckily, we had Martin Luther King Jr. Day this Monday, so Gretna and Lincoln Lynx were both able to hold their competitions that day, even though it was still very cold. That's what we'll mention. This cold will be a theme for this weekend as well, but hopefully we'll get some show choir this week. So overall, big snowstorm comes through, like 5 to 6 inches. Des Moines Metro, just a whole bunch of the Midwest, basically show choir homeland for January. So very unfortunate that we lose a bunch of competitions there. And it's going to have a huge impact on those host schools that we'll talk about. But one, Sioux Falls Jefferson, they were the first to cancel. They announced that on Thursday because their school district had already canceled all of those events on the weekend. By Thursday, they set up a GoFundMe, and luckily it's already raised about $8,000. It's huge because when you have a competition, a big amount of the money that pays for the choir program and all this traveling, they're going like 3 to 4 hours sometimes, is your competition. And when you have a snowstorm and your whole competition gets wiped out, you lose all that money.
Absolutely. Ethan, I know last Saturday was shaping up to be a big day in show choir land. Did you still get to take in that a little bit, or were you pretty much wrecked by the snow as well?
I mean, no, not a lot of snow where I was. It's more just bitter coldness and wind. But yeah, I wasn't able to get in much show choir as I wanted to. Shout out to Beavercreek for having a stream. I heard that it was a fantastic stream. Um, yeah, but I just want to give a quick shout out to the choirs who did get canceled because I know that's just such a pain trying to reschedule everything. I know Waukee had a bunch of groups leave and then come try to join. Same with a bunch of other comps. I would like to give a shout out to Alaska. I know we'll talk about them in a little bit, but doing what they had to do to still have the event go on, that's huge, especially trying to give these groups their first show. Try to give them some exposure, try to go right away. And it's, like you said, it's a huge fundraiser. So if you haven't already, definitely go to those choirs who weren't able to have a competition today and give whatever you can if you can. So.
Yeah, and just touching on those choirs that got their performances canceled, you know, unless you were competing or hosting last weekend on the first weekend of January, this is the season premiere that is knocked out for a lot of groups, right? And so any competitive advantage that you may have gotten by starting your season, you know, a weekend earlier than perhaps the rest of your circuit pretty much goes away. And so that's definitely something that will have competitive implications down the line, right? But I think that we can all agree that that is definitely a secondary effect, just second to all of these kids not getting to perform and not getting to share in all of that camaraderie. So I believe Sioux Falls Jefferson was the only one I saw with a GoFundMe. If I'm wrong, either of you can correct me on that. But so go support Sioux Falls Jefferson if you can. Obviously, there's no obligation to it all. I do want to give a shout out here to both Gretna and Lincoln Links. Nathan mentioned this a little bit earlier, but I guess a lot of Nebraska schools are out on Martin Luther King Jr. Day. Don't know how much that varies across the country. It is a federal holiday, but it's kind of like Veterans Day. Like, it's a federal holiday, but not a lot of things close on that day. So Gretna and Lincoln Links were both able to have some good competitions this week. And the results, you know, we talked about them as a big comp of the week, and we had Johnston and Papillion La Vista South, both of this competition. Neither of them were able to attend the rescheduled Gretna Prime Time, but we did still have some pretty interesting results. Lincoln Southwest Resonance took the grand championship, and then in first runner-up was Millard North Infinity, second runner-up Elkhorn South Blackout, third runner-up Papillion La Vista, Free Spirit, fourth runner-up Grand Island Ultimate Image, and fifth runner-up Elkhorn North Adrenaline. Couple things that I want to touch on here. Number one, I was going to go to this competition. I couldn't since it was moved on Monday, so a little bit saddened by that. But first thing I want to touch on here is Lincoln Southwest really coming out strong with a grand championship. I saw that they had a Chicken Little themed show this year. Don't know if either of you guys saw that, but thoughts on a Chicken Little show?
That's awesome. That's awesome. That's so outside of the box. Something I thought I would never see. So shout out to them. That's actually a great show concept. I can't wait to see it.
Yeah, we see a lot of the same, but I can certainly not tell you that I've seen a Chicken Little show so far.
Yeah, and so this is actually a little bit interesting because I saw Lincoln Southwest last year, and they did a Wicked show last year. And so it wasn't like, obviously there were a couple of numbers from the musical, but it wasn't like entirely from the musical. It was mostly telling the story through different musical numbers. And obviously with Chicken Little, you don't have any of that to start with anyways. But, you know, this is an interesting thing. This is now 2 years in a row that they've done shows off of popular, we'll just call them media, whether it be musical or movies or whatever. So that was interesting. The other thing that I wanted to touch on here was Papillion La Vista coming in third runner-up. Initially, they were slated to go to Ralston, which is one of the competitions that unfortunately hit the chopping block. And a lot of people had them picked as the winner of Ralston. And Papillion, while they may play second fiddle in their district to Papio South and Titanium and that amazing program that goes on over there, they've been very dangerous in their own right in the Nebraska circuit for a long time. And so them coming in fourth place here on the surface definitely comes as a bit of a shock. And it did catch me a little bit by surprise, too, until I learned that their longtime director, Tyler Buglewitz, sorry, still getting that name, he's actually teaching in Germany now. So that's definitely a change. You don't see that very often. Sometimes you see him go to different high schools that just don't have a show choir in the area or whatever. He's actually teaching in Germany now. So assistant director Meredith LaRoe has stepped up to be part of that lead team now. And then Lindsay Ussery, who formerly was at Sioux Falls O'Gorman, is the other half of that directing team now. So I'm definitely not hitting the panic button on Free Spirit right now. I'm just noticing that there is a director change. I didn't check to see if the choreographers changed. And also, Nebraska, I've thought for a long time, is a very underrated show choir scene. I think it pulls weight nationally and would so if matched up against all these different groups. So I think that fourth place for Papio, and not the end of the world by any means, but just something to take notice of for sure. And then the second shout out going to Lincoln Links. This one had the lineup decimated a little bit more than most. We definitely saw some shuffling from groups that were initially going to come but then weren't. Elkhorn North was actually supposed to be here. They wound up going to Gretna instead, and then they were the 6th group in finals at Gretna. Lincoln East was originally at Ralston along with Papillion. They were one of the groups that I thought was going to give Papillion a good run for the money at Ralston. They wound up going to Lincoln Lynx, and they wound up basically cleaning out the mixed division. In 2nd place was Grand Island Northwest, and then in 3rd place was Hastings, 4th place was Scott, and 5th place was Bellevue West. So Lincoln Public Schools coming out with the rare 2-sweep Monday in the show choir world. Don't know if that's ever been done before. 2 schools from the same district sweeping comps on a Monday. I was also supposed to go to a portion of this one, so I'm a little disappointed in that as well. But this is a competition that simply didn't exist last year, and so I'm very happy that they were at least able to salvage it, get their first competition down. The Lincoln program also expanded from 1 to 2 choirs this year, so shout out to Lincoln High as well. I don't know if you guys have anything to add on to that, but I just wanted to give a shout out to the competitions that happened on Monday.
No, yeah, going back to what you said about Lincoln Southwest, I think they won our award for best theme last year because of
I
how
believe
well
so, yeah.
I think they did with their Wicked show. I'm glad you brought that up because I completely forgot. But yeah, they do always have great shows. Huge win for them because I know last year that they had a lot of second place finishes, I believe, and I think they got one right at the end. So going off of last year's success must feel really good for them to start on the right note. And I mean, they beat some really good schools like Millard North. Millard North, I thought they would probably snag this one. I'm a big Millard North fan. I like their productions. I feel like they use props really well. I feel like the choreo is very clean. Um, yeah, but of course the storyline will be free spirit. But like you said, don't hit the panic button. It's first comp for everybody, especially in these conditions. And then going back to the other competition, I thought 14 karat gold might pull this one out, but I mean, I know they had a change of choreographers, and I know it's a completely new year, but really big win for Lincoln East, especially against some really good choirs down there.
You know, you're a big Lincoln. Sorry, Nathan, I'll get to you in a moment. But, I'm the opinion guy on this podcast now, I guess, after last week. And I'm going to come down with an opinion here, and I'm going to say that it would have been a massive disappointment if Lincoln East didn't win this competition. I saw Lincoln East at UNL Midwest Cup last year. They totally sold me on everything they're doing. And like you said, Lincoln East did have a director change. Aaron Zart, who was their director for a long time, left. He's now, I believe, somewhere in Missouri, somewhere that doesn't have a show choir program. So Elizabeth Wissink, who was the assistant director, she stepped up to be main director now. They picked up another assistant director fresh out of UNL, so a good pick on the leadership team there. But, as good as 14 karat gold is, and they've run over a lot of smaller competitions these past few years after the pandemic, I just didn't think that they would stand up to Lincoln East. And Nathan, you had something to say, and I'm going to let you say it now.
Yeah, I want to reiterate just it was amazing just seeing all of the competitions get canceled, but then we saw these 2 competitions come out. Like Gretna was first, that they're holding it on a Monday, and then Lincoln Lynx followed. And I feel like it was pretty big for the Nebraska scene to be able to get those 2 competitions. And like you mentioned earlier, someone will have to look if two high schools from the same school district have ever won on a show choir Monday. That's some statistic you have to look into showchoir.com for. But I'm glad all the schools got to compete. Also want to mention Blue Valley. It was very, very cold because that's in Kansas. It was very cold Saturday night. They went all the way through finals. I'm sure it was probably a very cold bus ride home because can't heat the whole bus. It's very difficult. So hopefully all those people going home stayed warm on their way back home. And then we'll actually be talking about Blue Valley next.
Yeah, we can just go into Blue Valley right now. Ethan, what do you say?
Yeah, for sure. I'm good.
Yeah, so I am actually a pretty well-closeted Southwest Missouri fanatic. I think that, like Nebraska, Southwest Missouri is one of those regions that would definitely pull weight nationally if simply given the attention. Mm-hmm. And so Blue Valley, while it is right on the outskirts of Kansas City, and it's, a little bit of a different animal, it mostly drew from that Western Missouri circuit. Just want to give a shout out to Blue Valley to start. This is the only show choir competition in the state of Kansas, and their director, Sam Dollins, actually was at Atchison for a while, and he, for whatever reason, just didn't have a competition at Atchison, went to Blue Valley and started a competition. So they did have some Kansas representation, Seaman, who is a group that really only gets out a couple times a year. They went. St. Thomas Aquinas was also there, and then Atchison was going to be there before they dropped due to the weather as well. But this was mainly a Western Missouri competition. This just featured phenomenal competition at the top. You had Neosho Corliers taking home the victory along with a caption. You had Webb City Singers right there in second place taking home the other major caption. And then you had Carthage Soundwave in third and Pleasant Hill Hillside Singers in fourth. And similar to Papillion, Pleasant Hill is one of those groups that starts with P and has undergone a direction change from this past year. So Karen Dollins, who is Sam Dollins' mother, she retired from Pleasant Hill this past spring. And so I can't remember off the top of my head who took over at Pleasant Hill. And, for those of you familiar with Missouri, Pleasant Hill was at the top of the stack, maybe under Troy. But other than that, pretty much at the top of the stack in Missouri for a long time. Maybe that's faded in recent years, and it's definitely faded now, coming in fourth to three other Missouri groups. But Neosho just had a killer season in 2022, and they're keeping it going. Webb City is another one of those groups that always seems to be like right on the cusp of breaking it big. Carthage, definitely mixing it up there as well. So for those people who are in tune with the Missouri show choir scene, I thought this was fantastic. And we'll talk about Missouri later on in our previews. I don't know if either of you guys have any thoughts or if it's just great to see show choir in Kansas for the one time a year it comes there.
I just want to give a big shout out to Webb City. I mean, they're starting off the year the same way they did last year at the same exact comps, except this time they snatched best choreo at this competition. And that's pretty big for Webb City. I know they're a very small school, and they hit the big groups pretty good. I got the pleasure of performing there my senior year due to COVID. So shout out to that. But yeah, I mean, them grabbing choreography from Neosho, who's been on a roll lately. Yeah, Pleasant Hill sliding down that far is really surprising to me. But again, I mean, first competition of the year. Congratulations to Neosho. I can't wait to see these choirs because like you said you're a fanatic. I mean, I love to dabble a little bit in some Missouri show choir because I only get to really watch Troy. So seeing what follows Troy is always pretty exciting.
Yeah, Troy Buchanan's like the only one that you really see on the national stage. It would be really cool to see a lot more of Missouri show choir because I'm sure it differs a lot more than Iowa. I haven't really got to see any of them at all, except for, like you mentioned, Troy. They're the only one that seems to take the national stage. But as you mentioned, Pleasant Hill, last year, the lowest finish was third. It was also at this competition. This year, placing fourth, pretty huge because they got a lot of second places through the Missouri scene. So really excited to see how Missouri shapes up this season, and also whether we'll see them maybe on the national stage in a year or two. Like maybe they need the fund. I'm not really in depth, but maybe they need that funding. Maybe they need that proof that they can win before they move up to the next level.
Yeah, one more thing I would like to add to that. I just looked at it. Bella Voice went into finals after winning their treble division, and then they go into finals, and then Sweet Sounds, who was second to them, finished above them. So big shout out to Sweet Sounds for putting on a great finals performance.
Yeah, women's groups in Missouri are just another absolute bloodbath.
Oh yeah.
And the thing about most of the Missouri circuit is just that it's so kind of tucked away geographically. It's right in that little corner where Missouri, Oklahoma, and Arkansas kind of intersect, but all of the schools are from Missouri. That for most of them, like getting out to Troy and maybe getting out to Show Choir Select in St. Louis, although that never happened, that's, a totally different discussion. But it kind of getting out to that eastern part of the state is kind of their opportunity to go on a national stage. And Neosho did go to Wheaton Warrenville South last year. They didn't make finals, but I think they still showed a lot of people for more well-known programs what they were about. And so I do agree with both of you that it'd be great to see more Missouri in the national stage coming up. We also did have a couple other competitions going on. We had a pretty decimated Onalaska Show Choir Classic. This one featured exclusively choirs from the La Crosse area with the exception of Bemidji Vocal Motive. And Bemidji went in there and they won the dang thing. Onalaska was the impetus for the start of the Bemidji program. Their former director, Chris Fettig, went to Onalaska in, I believe, 91 or 92 and decided, hey, I'm going to start a show choir next fall at the school I'm teaching at. So Bemidji's been to Onalaska, I'm pretty sure, every year since. And so they've won the past 3 Onalaska Classics. It was a split caption decision between them and La Crosse Central. So La Crosse Central is a group that hasn't won in a couple of years. And so it was a very tight battle there. Tough that La Crosse Central comes out on the losing end, but hey, when you're placing groups, that's got to happen. They were followed up by a pretty solid contingent of choirs. La Crosse Logan didn't make finals last week, and then they rebounded to third this week. And then Holman Midwest Express was actually second in prelims. They fell to fourth in finals, and then Sparta Upstage Adrenaline in fifth, and Eau Claire Memorial Old Age Fire sixth. Pretty much, what was going to be a really big lineup, and it was our wild card comp of the week last week, turned into be a pretty local affair, but still some good results. I don't know if either of you guys have any particular insights on that.
The only thing I gotta say is big third place finish for Logan. That's big. They've competed, I believe, so far this season. Yeah, they got no placement, like you said. Yeah, so big third place finish for them. That's some good vibes going into the next competition.
And as you mentioned, this was mostly a local lacrosse showdown of most of the metro area of lacrosse coming in and competing. But Bemidji is a huge outlier, though. They had to drive 6 hours from northern Minnesota through where a bunch of snow had just fallen the night before to go to this competition at all. So I'm sure that was pretty big for them. But yeah, like you said, they've been going to Onalaska, and they've been very successful at Onalaska. So not too surprised by the result here, but I'm glad that they overcame the snow and the winter storm to be able to go to this competition in Wisconsin to defeat all your Wisconsin schools there. Can't let them have one.
Yeah. And, if you listened to our podcast last week, you know that Bemidji's a group that has a new director this year, has a new choreographer this year, and they came out and they still took home the grand championship. And so there's a lot of change at some Minnesota programs this year. Waconia has shown that even though they had a little bit of a change on the director side, they're as strong as ever. Bemidji has shown that even though they've changed both director and choreographer, they're still keeping up strong. And so now the impetuous probably just falls on St. Francis, which is the last major Minnesota program with kind of a big turnover in the leadership team. Their competition last weekend at Sioux Falls Jefferson got canceled. So I believe we will see that in 2 weeks' time, although don't exactly quote me on that. Moving to Ohio, we've got the Beavercreek Midwest Show Choir Classic. Loveland taking home a big win in this one with Best Choreography, followed by Hurricane. And then Noblesville with Best Vocals in third, Marion Harding in fourth, Hurricanes Girls in fifth, and Loveland's Girls in sixth. Unfortunately, our Ohio contributor, Simon Zimmerman, unable to join us tonight. But this one, definitely big for a number of reasons. I'm going to leave the talk about Noblesville to Nathan. I'm going to cover a couple of points, what Simon kind of touched on with me. The first one is that even though Marion Harding brought up the bottom of the large mixed groups in this competition, it's probably the best a lot of people have ever seen Marion Harding. And so that's a very good thing for that program. And then at the top, obviously, Hurricane and Loveland, kind of sort of rivals simply because they just compete against each other a lot. And obviously, it was super close with Loveland only getting one caption on the top and Hurricane right there as well. And I think that unless something really big changes, Hurricane is still in position to command the state of West Virginia. Again, Nathan, you are the Indiana expert here. Noblesville NHS Singers was third place with Best Vocals. What do you make of it?
I was excited to see Noblesville. I would have them probably 8th, 9th, 10th in our scene for NHS Singers. Indy is incredible gauntlet as you talk about, or as we've talked about in the past. And I'm excited to see their show once again. They had a typical NHS singer theme, which is dealing with romance. It seems like a lot of their shows have some deal with romance, and I like their twist this year that they bring on the Back to the Future theme, which was really fun to see. Back where they have to go back to the past and just making that part of the romance. It felt like definitely a different NHS singer show. Very strong vocally overall, as you would expect out of Indiana groups, winning Best Vocals, as some of the Ohio groups like to focus on a lot more choreo. And I did see that, I think, when you saw them. A big takeaway I had out of this competition is just what you see in the Ohio Valley is usually you see a lot of ripples, and they were really good. I would say that's a big part of why Loveland did so well, and they won this competition. I mean, they had awesome costumes. If you see the what was it? The stream wasn't the highest of quality, but you could tell that their costumes so poppy, so colorful. They won best costumes, of course. Really, I would be really excited to see them in person. Don't think I will be able to this year, unfortunately, since they're in the Ohio circuit. Overall, I thought they had a lot of great energy throughout the show. They were able to contain it. Some parts where it slowed down a bit where I don't think they intentionally wanted to, so there is some more improvement there. The choreo, like I mentioned, carried them. Definitely more vocal. They could focus a little more on vocals, but overall, it was an amazing choreo-based performance, I think, compared to the other groups that you saw there. It really reminded me a lot of Pequot's show last year. They're the breakout group of Ohio. They had lots of brighter and neon colors in their costumes, and they really relied on enthusiasm, connection with the audience to win. And one last point, they have a lot of great, amazing levels. That's a huge part, I think, when you're dealing with like those first versus second, is how maybe if all the guys get low, all the girls get high, and those levels is a huge thing that you can tell at the back of the theater to show which one's better. And then final group I wanted to touch on was Hurricane Heatwave, which won the women's division there, and then also got to perform at finals, which is great. They had an NFL themed show, which I don't really like football themed show. I feel like there's not a lot to go on. I feel like you have one or two numbers, but then you're kind of repeating the same ideas, the same song types. But I thought they did the choreo part of it very well. It was a little bit of a weird start to it with a longer instrumental opening. But overall, I really liked how everything came together. Very clean show. And definitely want to look out for West Virginia and Ohio scene will be Hurricane Heatwave defeating the Loveland all-girls group Allure, as well as the NHS group.
Yeah, and before I toss it to Ethan real quick, we have a few comments in the chat. Number one, Loveland and Noblesville share a common choreographer for most of their show. That's very interesting considering one of those groups got the vocal caption and one of those groups got the choreography caption. So just goes to show the individual differences between groups. We had a question about where Center Grove falls in the Indianapolis rankings. That's not on the show sheet tonight, but we will be publishing a written Indiana top 10 very soon, probably later this week. So go to homeroomshowchoir.com for that. And then we had a third question about Daniel Hand Vibe. We are going to get to Daniel Hand Vibe very, very soon. Ethan, your thoughts on Beavercreek?
It's kind of how I thought it would play out at Beavercreek, except, of course, the captions going all willy-nilly. Seeing a group win best band and best set and get second place over a group who got best culture or best vocals, that means that they had a really good all-around show, like you touched on, Nathan. I'm really excited to see Hurricane because since they're in such a remote part of, and they have to be in part of the Ohio scene, it is really cool to see what they come up with. I'm also a big Loveland guy. I've got to see them a few times in person, and their choreography is also just always on point. Also, I just love that Beavercreek honored the late great Jeff Clark with their Spirit Award this week. I thought that was a really cool touch, and I'm really glad that Beavercreek added that to their awards this year.
For sure. And just closing out on Beavercreek, I want to give a shout out to the top two groups in the small mix division. South Dearborn opening night took home the win. For those people who are well acquainted with Midwest small mix scenes, South Dearborn is pretty well known. They're a border town in Indiana, so they compete pretty equally in both states. But then second place was Jonathan Alder High Society, and that's a group that I really had zero background on before today. If anything, I thought oh, they're definitely not in contention to place well. And they came out there and they won second place. And so Jonathan Alder is a group that I will be watching now in the small mix scene for the rest of the year. The final competition that went on this past weekend was the Lowell Mill City Show Choir Festival. This one also had a fair number of drops, although I think it's just because it's so far out ahead of the rest of the New England scene and not because of the snow, because the drops did happen, I think, more than a week in advance. So what wound up happening is that you had three groups in the large mix division. You had Daniel Hand Vibe taking home the win, Waltham Music Unlimited in second, and then Andover from start to finish in third. You know, Daniel Hand, they've been the standard of excellence in New England for a long time. There have been other groups that have kind of come and gone, but Daniel Hand has been pretty consistent for the better part of the last 15 years up in that circuit. Getting that win over Waltham right away. I believe the next New England competition is Shepherd Hill on February 3rd, and we will see a rematch of them there. But that's just such a long gap before the next New England competition. Getting out there and starting that right away is, I think, critical for Vibe. We didn't see South Windsor Coral Spectrum, which would be what I would expect to be the only other group to seriously factor in to the New England large mix scene this year. Not a ton to talk about here. Just any other thoughts from either of my co-hosts?
No, yeah. Getting it now for Vibe is huge because down the road, those are going to be two completely different groups and shows. So much happens, so much changes throughout the course of the season. So seeing them get a win now is huge. I'm a big Viper ever since what was it, 2019 with their Stranger Things show. That was one of the greatest shows I think I've seen, and they ended up getting. They didn't even. I don't think they placed that high at that competition I was at, but I mean, still they always put on a great production. They'd always like California. It's almost California-like out in Massachusetts a little bit with Vibe, and that's really cool to see. I know that they went up against a lot of competition last year towards the end. After having a great season to start off, I know they went up against John Burroughs, which is a huge go against, especially on seeing John Burroughs on the East Coast. So them going into their own territory. So I know they want to come out strong this season, especially after that second place finish last year, and they have. And I can probably say that the vibe train's still vibing. It's still vibing.
Still vibing, yes. I really like Daniel Hand as well. They usually bring a lot more theater elements. Like you said, they're a lot more California-esque. But also one of the things we didn't mention about all the canceled comps is that you're not receiving feedback this week from judges and other directors and other performers or whoever is seeing your show that week. But in Massachusetts, you will get that feedback. And now they have several weeks to come back, improve their show, and they'll have another face-off against Waltham and against Andover at Shepherd Hill on February 3rd. But yeah, several weeks. I think those shows will change a lot. So I'm hoping Shepherd Hill will also have a live stream. I did look a little bit into Lowell, Mill City, but didn't look too far into it, but might review that live stream again. And I'm hoping to see more of Massachusetts and have them develop a little bit more. They're kind of on this island up in the Northeast. You don't see a lot of other groups up in New York or where else. And Daniel Hand Vibe is bringing the national spirit to Massachusetts and challenging their competitors to get better and better.
Yeah, I think the Vibe train may have to stop in Connecticut because Daniel Hand is in Connecticut. They just wind up competing mostly in Massachusetts.
That's on me.
It's
sorry,
like Daniel Hand and then South Windsor and maybe Windsor Locks are like the three main Connecticut groups. But that's okay. And, Nathan, you talked about how New England's on a little bit of an island, and we're running over time for this segment, so I'm going to wrap it quick. But New England was really hit hard by the pandemic, similar to California in a way. And so you definitely saw a reduction in the number of active groups, Lyme, Old Lyme, definitely a couple other ones that I can think of just off the top of my head that don't compete anymore. Even Uniondale from New York, which is like the New York group now that Greece Athena isn't active anymore. Even they're maybe only going to one event a year instead of two or three. So definitely, best wishes to the New England show choir scene to get back up and running. We have a comment in the chat. The rabbit is coming out on top again at Shepherd Hill. I would assume that is in relation to Vibes, but we're gonna let that sit, and we're gonna come back to it on our first show of February, or maybe our last show of January, depending on what day of the week it is. And we mentioned this briefly earlier, that at Beavercreek, the winning group got best choreography, the second place group got no captions, and the third place group got best vocals. Nathan, I know you had something to say about this, about how it's not surprising to see a group from Indianapolis not be first, but then still win the vocal caption. What's the reasoning behind that?
Yes, so it's definitely not out of the ordinary at all for a caption to go to a group that's third or fourth. We've seen it in the past, but specifically for Indianapolis, as you say, is that indie groups really sell out for the vocals, developing that vocal sound. And once they get all the choreo kind of mastered, they really go back to that vocal sound. and developing it even further because vocals is weighed so highly on their score sheets for Indianapolis. One major instance in Indianapolis was Center Grove, as we had mentioned earlier. They got third at the 2022 Franklin Central competition with best vocals behind both Carmel and Franklin Central. So it's not too uncommon, and you'll mention we've seen it before at other competitions outside of Indianapolis.
Right. I have a couple crazy caption examples to get to, but Ethan, you got anything to say off the top of your head?
Yeah, lately we've been seeing a lot of these instances where it's been captions are like almost fifth place, fourth place, all over the place. Yeah, but like what you're saying about going into Indianapolis, whenever when my choir would go into Indianapolis, that whole week we would just hammer vocals because we knew if we could somehow get an edge up in vocals, that we would have a shot at winning the whole thing. So yeah, like you said, Indianapolis is huge on the vocal category and how much it's weighed, and yeah, about the captions, like you said, vocals always weigh more. Unless it's somewhere different, I might not be that well educated on that. But majority of the competition I've been, vocals is one, choreography two, and then band. Depending on band, some people don't even rate bands, or they rate bands completely different. Um, so yeah, so these whole caption split ups is nothing new, and we're gonna see a lot more of it as choirs get better with time.
Right. And you hit on a couple good points there. One, it's not our place to try and design a uniform scoring system for show choir. That's for people who are a lot older than us, who have a lot more industry experience than us. I mean, we're just three people who have phones and the time to record a podcast. So that's way above our pay grade, considering we get paid nothing to do this. But number two is that you talk about as we see choirs get better, we expect more of this. And I actually totally agree with that point. You know, at a certain point, there's only so much time that you have to rehearse with, right? And so you can spend that time either rehearsing specifically vocals, specifically choreography, or some mix of both, right? And as we see choirs get closer and closer to the top of that score sheet, you know, you're going to have to choose, okay, what do I spend my rehearsal time on? Is it, you know, inching super close to the top in this category or the other category? So I agree with you that we will see more of that going on. Just a couple of weird caption examples I had. One from last year that really stuck out to me was the Rouse Capital City Classic in Texas. The winners, Arlington Corliers, had no captions. The second place group, Timber Creek Aerodynamics, also no captions. The third place group, Fort Worth Southwest, got best choreography. And then the fourth place group, Texas City Soundstations, got best vocals. So that was a pretty wild example that came to me just from last year. And then what I consider to be the all-time example of this was on Alaska in 2004. There were 28 groups in the mixed division there. So we talk about a long day. That's a long day. 28 groups in the mixed division. No prep division, no women's division, none of that. Just bring your varsity choir and that's it. The ninth place group in prelims got best vocals, and that was Omaha Westside. They didn't make finals, and they had best vocals. And so we're not going to discuss that at length. But if you want to spend a good 2 or 3 hours reading forum boards, go read the boards for the Unalaska Show Choir Classic 2004 because anything and everything goes in that competition.
Go down that rabbit hole.
Yeah. Also go for Finale Nationals 2010, I think was the one year that Finale Nationals was a thing. That was a whole nother adventure for me. We're going to move on to Comps of the Week preview, and hopefully none of these are going to get snowed out. And so a reminder just at the top of this segment that we will have a wildcard competition of the week that will be voted on tomorrow. So watch for polls on our Instagram here and then also on our X account that you can vote for the fourth competition of the week that will be written about. We're only going to talk about 3 tonight, but there are still plenty of good show choir opportunities going on this weekend. We're going to start in Iowa, and we've talked about Iowa every week. Perhaps at some point we'll get away from talking about Iowa, but the analytics show that Iowa is the state that listens to this podcast the most. So we're going to keep talking about Iowa. The main competition in Iowa this weekend is Johnston Showzam. So this is another one in the Des Moines Metro. This one features another pretty massive 3-headed battle at the top. We've got Cedar Rapids Prairie Ambassadors, and then Urbandale Studio and Waukee Northwest EOS. All 3 of these groups had competition opportunities taken away from them last week. All 3 of them remain very dangerous groups. Waukee Northwest, obviously in their third year. Urbandale, one of the established legends of the Iowa show choir community. Prairie coming in from the Cedar Rapids area. And then also Cedar Rapids Kennedy in there as well, a group that I don't know if a ton of people would put right on the level of those top three groups, but definitely a group to watch out for as well. What are the thoughts on how this comp will play out?
Yeah, I feel like there's a bunch of advantage for Walking Northwest being the only group to perform so far, which is huge because I'm looking at this list and I would place a bunch of groups maybe higher than them. Maybe not a bunch, but a few to place higher than them if they've gotten a comp under their belt. Um, I feel like that battle for fifth, sixth is going to be massive for probably either Norris or Norwalk. But I know you're the opinion guy, but I'm about to go down what I think. You ready? All right, here we go. So I don't think EOS is going to win this one. Looking at the judges on this one, I'm seeing a lot of choreography, and I mean there are a lot of vocal judges on there, and I think Urbandale has the most balance. Now again, I have not seen any show, so these are take them as they're nothing. They're nothing. They're just some random guy's opinions. But I'll take Urbandale 1, maybe EOS 2, and then people are sleeping on Prairie. I think people are like we talked about last week. I think Prairie's top 3 at this competition. This is no disrespect to Cedar Rapids Kennedy because they're going right in that third spot, them in at the 4th spot, and they're a great choir. And then I think, like I said, those last 2 spots for finals is going to be really tough. Really good battle, but I think it will be Norris Gold and then Norwalk sitting at 6. So that's why I think it's going to happen at that comp.
As you mentioned at the start, hopefully we won't get snowed out, and I don't think this competition will get snowed out, but certainly one thing that will play a factor will be the extreme cold. Iowa is a tough state for the cold because they've handled it so much. They still had weekend or activities going on at Johnston today, even with the wind chill -15, -20. So I highly doubt this competition gets completely canceled. It might be like delayed an hour or two because it's going to be really freezing in the morning, but we got to get some Iowa show choir. These groups want to perform. So I definitely really hope that this does not get completely canceled for extreme cold. I think they'll break through and we'll hopefully see this competition. Waukee Northwest, as you mentioned, already previously competed this season at Lamar, at Ankeny Centennial and lost to Lamar earlier this year. And then at Johnston last year, they beat several of these groups. So even though you're saying more choreo judges, I would lean with the experience, the group that has done this before. I'll take Waukee Northwest to win Johnston. And then I'll probably Urbandale 2nd, Prairie 3rd, but you cannot rule out Cedar Rapids, Kennedy either.
No, that'll be tight. The middle of the pack is also going to be insane.
Yeah, so before I say my predictions, because I am the opinion guy in this podcast, the showchoir.com prediction board has nearly 100 predictions, probably 100 by the time we record this. And Waukee Northwest leads with best vocals, and then Urbandale trails with best choreography. And that's interesting because I would almost flip those captions based off of what we've seen in the past. I'm going to agree with Ethan here. I'm going to take Urbandale for the win. Urbandale is a group that had a very quiet season for beating as many programs as they did last year. I think they just kind of got caught up in the just raging inferno that was Johnston in the same metro area. But Urbandale knocked a lot of other people off the list last year. And so I'm going to take Urbandale here as well. I'm going to pretty much fall in line with Ethan. I'll go Waukee Northwest at the 2, Prairie 3, Cedar Rapids Kennedy 4. You know, it's just so tough with Prairie and Cedar Rapids Kennedy. Both of those groups are perpetually on the edge of going from high A tier to like golden S tier Iowa show choir. And it's just a matter of which group is there this year. I'm actually going to flip your 5 and your 6. I'm going to go with Norwalk Sound Adrenaline at the 5, and I'm going to go with Norris Gold at the 6. Norwalk has already shown that they've been a good group this year. They placed really well at Des Moines Christian, I believe. And then Norris, as much as I love Norris, they definitely had a better season in 22 than they did in 23. So I'm going to pick Norris at the 6. I don't think that anybody's prep group is going to make it in here. I know Waukee Northwest's prep group has made finals a couple of times before. I think Prairie's has as well. I would expect that all 6 of these 4A groups at this competition, because I believe North Polk is in the 3A division, I would assume that all 6 groups in the 4A division would come through and make finals. So moving on to Millard West Music Lives. Also, there is a live stream for Johnston. So if you want great Iowa show choir, make sure to tune in to the Johnston finals. We're going to move on to Millard West Music Lives in Nebraska. So talking about Nebraska a few weeks in a row as well here. This one featuring some Titans at the top as well. You have Omaha Westside Amazing Technicolor Show Choir, Papillion, La Vista South Titanium, Millard North Infinity, who we talked about earlier in this podcast. You have Gretna Revolution, and you have Grand Island Northwest, who we also talked about a little bit previously. You have Lincoln Northeast also potentially making some noise in there as well. Thoughts, opinions, predictions, anything you're comfortable saying?
I think ATSC takes this one. Besides that, it's all just it's insane. It's insane. There's so many talented groups here. That middle of the pack. I mean, we talked about it just a little bit ago. The middle of the pack of this one is crazy. I said I'm a Millard North believer, but I mean, I can't. I don't know if I could put them above Gretna or Papillion. So, the way these predictions are set, I don't even want to touch them. I just know that ATSC might come out with a sweep here.
Yeah. This is in the Omaha Metro, so it'll be a little bit cold, not nearly as cold as Johnston. They'll get some snow in the week, but hopefully this goes on as scheduled because these are some top-tier Nebraska groups for the area. I would have West Side winning. They've just proven it year over year in the Nebraska competition, or in the competition scene there, that they are the group to beat in Nebraska. But now let's hand it over to the person that actually has the opinions. Do you think Papillion La Vista South will beat ATSC?
So this one is just so hard to figure out because Westside, Papio South, and Millard West are by far the three most winningest programs in Nebraska history. Like, it's not even necessarily that close. I think Lincoln Southwest might be 4. And it's just so hard because so often you see Westside and Papio South go back and forth throughout the season. You'll see them maybe meet at like here in January, and then Elkhorn South in February, and then Lewis Central in March. And like each time there's a little bit of a different placing and a little bit of a different caption split. And then you throw like a Millard West in there somewhere else, or like a Mitchell in there somewhere. And then that just throws everything out of whack again. You know, I'll be the contrarian here. I am as much of a West Side fan as everybody else is. You know, for a long time, they were the best performance I'd seen live. I'm going to have to pick Papio South here. I just really think that they run a tight ship, and I think that they have the potential to take home the hardware here. Although I will disagree with you, Ethan, on the sweep. I don't think anybody sweeps this competition. I think it's way too close to be a sweep here. So I'll go Papio South at the 1. I'll go West Side 2, and I'll actually take Millard North at the 3. Gretna is a group that comes in with a question mark for me, not because they have director changes or choreographer changes or anything like that, but that they're losing a portion of their school enrollment to Gretna East, which opened this year. So is that going to affect their show? I don't know. You know, and that's just something that I can't say for certain until we've seen them compete. But just because of that and how strong Millard North looked this past, I guess yesterday, that feels so weird. How strong Millard North looked yesterday. I'm going to take Millard North at the 3. I'll go probably Gretna at the 4, and then I'll go Grand Island Northwest at the 5 and Lincoln Northeast at the 6. Although I would not be surprised to see Grand Island Northwest take the 4 away from Gretna. You know, Lincoln Northeast is a program that I want to give a shout out to. Nick Cabarros is an alumni of that program, and he's taken over that. And this is a group similar to Gretna that's undergone a little bit of an enrollment shift. Lincoln Northwest opened last year, and that shaved a portion of Northeast's enrollment off. I saw them last year at UNL. I saw Northeast, and I thought that they still looked pretty spectacular for a school that had some of their enrollments like to a different school. The only other thing is that you got to factor in maybe 1 or 2 of these prep groups are going to make finals. I don't think so. I think similar to Johnston, I think all of these varsity groups are going to come through and make finals. I think there may also be a couple more mixed groups somewhere down the line. But if a group from the lower divisions were to make finals, I would say that Westside Simply Irresistible, which is their girls group, I would say that they have the best shot of cracking the top 6. Our third competition of the week is the Pleasant Hill Battle of the Best. So we talked a little bit about Pleasant Hill earlier on in this episode. They're hosting their own competition this weekend. And this one is looking to be a drag down dropout Missouri battle as well. We've got Neosho fresh off a grand championship at Blue Valley. We've got Blue Valley fresh off of hosting. We've got Battle and Platte County going for their first appearances of the year. We've got Oak Park, which is a little bit of a shifty group. And then kind of behind those top five, we've got kind of a glut of Missouri groups. We've got Harrisonville, Warrensburg, Smith Cotton, Grain Valley, any number of names to fill out the sixth final spot. Like we kind of touched upon earlier, Missouri is a little pocket of show choir, and I'm going to get to your guys' thoughts in a moment. I just noticed we have a comment in the chat. What are our opinions on Mississippi show choir? We're going to wait until Northwest Rankin happens, and we'll give you our thoughts, maybe ahead of Jackson Prep next week, but for sure ahead of Jassy in 2 weeks, because Jassy is a competition you're not going to want to miss. But we're talking about Pleasant Hill right now. So Ethan or Nathan, thoughts about how this one is going to go?
This is a toughie. But give me Neosho. I think Neosho comes out with a sweep here. But again, there are some really good choirs. I feel like Smith Cotton is up and coming. I feel like they're a sleeper in that tier 2. Also, what's up with all these tiers? That's okay. That's a different conversation for later.
You want the short explanation right now?
Yeah.
So Iowa does their divisions based off of school enrollment tiers. They have 4A, 3A, 2A, and 1A based on school enrollment. Missouri actually has 5 tiers. They have 5A down to 1A, and Blue Valley is from Kansas, and Kansas goes up to 6A. So Blue Valley is a 6A school, and then all of the big Missouri schools are 5A and then 4A, and then you usually have a couple 3A and 2A schools going there as well. So those are the Missouri tiers.
Okay, because I know everywhere's different, and it always hurts my brain when I'm trying to make those rankings, and I have to put them into their different categories, and it's just all over the place. But end all be all, I think Neosho takes this one. I think they're such a strong group, like they showed earlier this past week. Something that catches my eye though is definitely this treble division. I would think Neosho walks out, Sugar and Spice walks out with the win here, but all these groups are really talented. I always see these groups always snag a place. Platte County, I feel like, is really good. I feel like I see Warrensburg always grab a placement here or there. Same thing with Oak Grove. So I'm gonna keep my eye on the this treble division, and of course, I gotta represent my boys, the base division. Neosho or Platte County. Oh man, I think I can almost see all 3 Neosho sweep is kind of what I'm thinking this weekend. All 3 groups I think they might snag all 3 divisions.
Nathan, anything you got?
I would say Missouri's the weakest division for me. I don't really know too much about Missouri. I see some big names like Neosho, and then, like you said, Blue Valley coming over from Kansas, not too far away. You said on this kind of border. I kind of want to ask what you're thinking about the group, and like this seems like a pretty big lineup for Missouri. Is this usually how all of these go down with was this 15 mixed groups that are competing?
Yeah, I see we've got Neosho in the chat, so shout out Neosho to tuning in. We appreciate it. Ethan, I'm going to disagree with you here, and I'm going to say that this is really not one of the more intriguing Missouri treble divisions that I've seen. I would expect Neosho to take this one pretty handily. If I had to pick a second group, I would say probably Platte County, and then I would pick Oak Park to kind of round it out. Warrensburg and Harrisonville, their women's groups are just kind of there a lot of the time. I would say if we had Webb City, Carthage, and Joplin here, I would say it would be a much more interesting women's division. But we're not talking about that. The crazy part is that this is our 3rd comp of the week, and this isn't only the only comp in Missouri this week. We've also got the Mount Vernon Midwinter Classic, which is happening in the more southern part of the state as well. But just in terms of the mixed division, it's so hard to pick against Neosho. They won Blue Valley last week, and I have no reason to think why they won't keep that up as well. In terms of who I have in second place, I have Blue Valley in second place. This group is very interesting. They're in their 3rd year of direction now under Sam Dollins. He did great things at Atchison. He elevated that program beyond what I thought anybody thought that he would do. And in terms of where they're at, I would expect them to grow a little bit from where they were last year. I don't know if they're at kind of powerhouse status for that Kansas-Missouri region. Picking a 3rd place group is just so hard here. This is where the going really gets tough for me. I think probably Neosho and Blue Valley are a solid 1 and 2, but then you have Battle, Platte County, and Oak Park, who are 3 groups that I think are very similar. Platte County and Battle both took home wins last year. I don't think Oak Park took home a win, but they're just kind of a sneaky, dangerous group. They kind of go here, there, and everywhere during comp season. Ethan, you touched on Smith Cotton a little bit before. They're a group. It'll be interesting to see kind of how they go past a couple of competition shakeups in their leadership team. And honestly, for me being the opinion guy, I don't really have an opinion here. I would say just somewhere Battle and then Oak Park and Platte County in 3, 4, 5. And then if I had to pick a 6, I would pick Harrisonville. Kip Matthew has kind of established a 4A dynasty at Harrisonville, and his son Dakota Matthew is actually one of the directors at Gretna now. So if I had to pick a 6, I would pick Harrisonville. But like Nathan said, it is just a very loaded Missouri lineup, and I'm just very excited to see how this one plays out. We have another question from the chat. Will the comp at Milton be on your radar to talk about next week? Milton is not one of the competitions with a larger lineup. So unless like a pretty major upset happens, I don't know if we're going to be talking about Milton a ton. But hopefully we'll be able to sneak that in somewhere. So we have 3 minutes left in our hour-long show. And so we debuted this segment last week at the end of the show. I thought it was a pretty good one. We only talked about 3 comps so far. There are 17 competitions happening this weekend. What is like one other competition that you guys are keeping your eyes on this week?
Nathan, you can go first.
Okay, I will pick Mount Zion Midwest Invitational. Really exciting. Yeah, I'm going to steal your one. I knew you were going to get it. Really exciting to see Troy Buchanan out of Missouri now challenging Glenwood in the Illinois scene. This will also be Mount Zion's debut performance, and they do a lot of traveling, so nice to start it at home and then go on a huge road tour for the season. Glenwood, Troy Buchanan, I would say Troy Buchanan, top Missouri group, I think beats Titan Fever in this one.
I mean, thanks for stealing mine. Now I have to do a little more research. But yeah, for anyone, I will be at Mount Zion this weekend, so feel free to say hi and all that stuff. Love supporting that. I wish it was a little longer, but I can't complain about getting out at 4:15. So, for a one-day competition. I feel like the one I'm going to keep my eye on will be, since you stole mine, thanks Nathan. Nitro. I think am I saying that right? Nitro. Or the Nitro?
I can't say I know the correct pronunciation. Nitro, Nitro. I don't know. If there's anybody from West Virginia in the chat, tell us how to say the word spelled Nitro.
Yeah, well, majority of the reason I'm talking about this one is because it's from West Virginia. But I mean, it's cool to see some of these groups come out, because as the person who tries to put the rankings together as much as I can, I always love seeing how Martinsburg Good Times shows up. I feel like they always put on a great show. Same with Winfield General Admission. They're always on my radar for that tier 2 in West Virginia. And then you have Kaleidoscope with Musclemen and Vocal Intensity and Marion Harding. I just think this is a tough one to predict. So far, the predictions have Marion Harding taking it with the choreo caption, and then Robert C. taking it with the vocal. I could see Martinsburg Good Time getting up there a little bit, but again, this is a tough one to predict. But that's my comp.
Yeah, just touching on that one a bit. I have it on good authority that Marion Harding is going to have a great year this year, so I would agree with Marion Harding taking the win here. I agree with you that Martinsburg is a very hard group to predict there, in that they're even isolated from the rest of West Virginia, and so some years they have great years, some years they have not so great years, and so that's very tough to predict. But this middle mixed division, West Virginia, Robert C. Byrd is a group that placed very well at states last year. Musclemen moving up to large mixed. They won their first competition ever last year. And like last week, I'm just going to simply punt on this one. I'm just excited at the sheer breadth of show choir that is happening. Indiana has 4 competitions this week, so none of them may involve top 10 groups in the state, but a lot of those smaller programs in Indiana are getting out there. And who knows, maybe we'll have an upset to talk about next week. We have 4 competitions in Nebraska. We talked about Millard West, but then we also have the UNL Midwest Cup, which will be a very enticing Wheaton-Warrenville South versus Lincoln East versus Lincoln Southwest matchup. And then we've got the Burke Bonanza and Hastings Tiger Clash as well. We've got 3 competitions in Wisconsin. People keep asking me for Milton predictions. Honestly, off the top of my head, I don't even remember who's going to Milton right now.
I can
So
get
let's pull up.
I can give you a quick one. I can give you a quick one.
Okay,
All right.
give me a quick
So
one.
I'm looking at the
Oh,
list. So
all right, I'll give you a Waconia prediction
okay.
or a Milton prediction.
Yeah. Well,
Waconia.
you kind of
That's
spoiled it. Yeah,
yeah.
Waconia taking it. Sweep. I think Sparta will take 2. I think the people are right on that one. Um, I could see Fort Atkinson taking 3 here. I can also see. I mean, I don't know much about the area more than you do, but but give me my Illinois group Oswego in the 4 spot. Give me Monona Grove in the 5, and then Craig at the 6 is what the people have. Looking at the other choirs, I think Hamilton is a decent group. So I think maybe give me Hamilton at the 6 spot. I know those are just wild. I didn't even look at anything, but those are my predictions
That's
for Milton.
all right. My predictions for Milton, I'll take Waconia at the 1, and then I'll actually take Fort Atkinson at the 2. I've heard that Fort Atkinson is going to be a better group this year than they were last year, and they were very much in the thick of things at a couple competitions last year. So I'll go Waconia at the 1, Fort Atkinson at the 2. I'll take Sparta at the 3, Hamilton at the 4, Oswego at the 5, and then at the 6 is pretty much a toss-up between Monona Grove and Craig. So those are Milton predictions. No, I haven't seen Milton's show yet. People stop asking me questions in the chat. We're over an hour. And then we also have multiple festivals in the South. Someone asked a question about Mississippi earlier in the show. We're going to get a look at some groups at Northwest Rankin this week. We get a look at some Alabama groups this week as well.
Excited.
At the Hoover City Schools Showcase. And this week is a weird week for us. We recorded on Tuesday since we had comps on Monday, but next week, Monday, 7 Eastern, 6 Central, 5 Mountain, 4 Pacific. I think that's 2 p.m. Hawaiian time. So trying to check all the time zones there. But we'll be back. In the meantime, make sure to follow us on Instagram and X at HomeroomSC. Go to our website, homeroomshowchoir.com. And then if you joined in late, this podcast in its entirety is going to be archived here on the Instagram and then also on Spotify and YouTube. And if you're listening on Spotify or YouTube, make sure on Spotify, if you give the show a rating, we recommend 5-star ratings. We think that's the best rating to give. And on YouTube, if you could subscribe to our channel and give the podcast episode a thumbs up, we will be debuting some new YouTube content besides the full podcast episodes, hopefully this week. So any other closing thoughts from you two?
No, thank you everyone for tuning in. We had some good numbers today. I'm glad to see people catching on and enjoying our stuff. We'll keep this kind of stuff going on. If you see me at Mount Zion, please give me a wave. Please say hi. I love meeting new people. Yeah, see you at Mount Zion if you're going.
And see people at New London. I'll be at New London. So.
And mostly just be on the lookout for stuff on our homeroom page. I think just check daily or every other day. We have a lot of content constantly streaming in. If you wanted to see more about what happened with the snowstorms, if you want the Beavercreek review, and I think Indianapolis rankings are gonna come out soon. A lot of stuff is about to come out on the website. So just stay on homeroomshowchoir.com. Definitely check that out. I will be taking a break next week from the podcast to celebrate my 20th birthday. So excited about that.
Happy birthday.
And then my first competition still is going to be February 3rd. So you won't see me out. Indianapolis is a little later here, but excited to see you guys out in person.
Oh yeah, it's exciting to get back out there, especially. Yeah, for sure.
All right. Thank you so much, everybody, for tuning in, and have a great evening.
Bye, guys.